What's going on, everybody? It is Jamie, and welcome to the channel Thrift on Fire. Today I'm going to do episode 3 of Let's Talk About Reselling in Canada, and this time it's with Tabs from Saskatchewan. Yes, Tabs from the Urban Goddess Shop. I really do appreciate her doing this as well because she doesn't really do a whole lot of collabs on YouTube, but also the fact that she was willing to do this is really solid. I will link down in the description below all of her socials, so if you're not subscribed to her on YouTube or follow her on Instagram, definitely do that as well, and let's get into it. So first of all, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time. And for people who don't know who you are, this is Tabs. How about you introduce yourself and where you're from?
Sure. I'm Tabs McCaffrey, and I'll just do my YouTube intro. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm a mom, a wife to 2 girls. I work part-time in a hospital pharmacy, and I sell used clothing online. And I've been doing it since 2020. So I started right in the beginning of the pandemic. And just love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Instagram. I don't even know. I don't even know what to say about myself. I feel like I talk so much all the time. That,
yeah. I think we all feel like that. I mean, you feel crazy doing YouTube anyway because you're essentially talking to yourself. I mean, you're trying to have a fluent conversation, but I get the struggle for sure.
It's strange talking to someone.
It's different, yeah. I mean, I already feel better, but I have I've always played music and done all sorts of things where I'm in front of people, but I still even getting on this with you. Like my anxiety is settling down, but I certainly get wound up real bad. But So 2020, that is pretty interesting. So what really was it, basically the pandemic itself that drove you into wanting to sell online, or what really sort of, it got you into reselling in general in Poshmark, I think is where you started, correct?
Yeah. So I work casual in the hospital pharmacy, and when the pandemic hit, we were reducing staff. The hospital stays, I don't know, the hospital in numbers was quite small because they were trying to keep it more safe for the people that were in, and the shifts just started to go down. And I was like, I need to figure something else out that's kind of like a side hustle, bring in some money if I don't get very many shifts. And I kind of fell into reselling. I've always been a little bit of a reseller per se. Jeff and I, my husband and I, we built and sold houses in our 20s. He flipped like snowmobiles, trailers, that kind of stuff. I did furniture refinishing before and would flip and sell. So we were not new to reselling, but I was new to clothing reselling. And I don't even remember how I came across it. Like, I don't remember that pivotal moment. But there was a point where I downloaded the Poshmark app in January 2020, and I was like, this is shady. Like, this isn't real. This is like a scam, right? I didn't put my payment information in it. And I think I listed my first item in June, and it sold within 7 days. And then I was like, okay, I can figure this out. And then you discover the online community and everything. And it's just,
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Poshmark is a great place to start too, just because in Canada, for sure, shipping is the toughest part about reselling online. And I'm sure you kind of see that when you branch away from Poshmark, how expensive it can be. But in your areas, in Saskatchewan, I would have to think shipping is probably even a bigger challenge, for you being in that area, unless there are more cross-border companies that I don't know about, but I would think you're sort of out there for sure.
Yeah, no, there's no cross-border courier in Saskatchewan, and I have looked into it a lot. I'm in the process right now of starting to do it, but I'm actually shipping my items to Vancouver to be shipped across the border. If they're going through Poshmark as Poshmark US, but when I sell on eBay, eBay negotiated some really good rates now this year, much better than I've seen in previous years. And I also use NetParcel, they're kind of like a third-party contractor. They work with UPS, FedEx, and Canada Post. And I actually just saw one new courier service that kind of pops up on mine. But yeah, shipping can be a challenge. One good thing about Saskatchewan, though, is that we're the middle of the country pretty much. So I'm quick ship time to East Coast or West Coast. And I find sometimes when you live far east and you're trying to ship to BC, you're looking at longer ship times. And one of the feedback or feedback that I get on my sales a lot is that I'm just such a quick shipper, but I think it's because I'm so central. It's easy and quick to get to either side.
Yeah, and that does make a lot of sense, especially once again saying that you're central. That does give you a better opportunity to get places faster. I
Yeah.
personally try to ship same day, even on Poshmark.
Yeah.
Even though with my eBay and stuff, I actually only twice a week drop off to the cross border stuff. But even then, I'm still creating the label and getting things moving. I
Yeah.
feel like waiting around too long, you can, basically build problems for yourself, because these days, if we're going to be honest, people believe we live in an Amazon world where things should be at your door the same day or the next day. And when you're selling on eBay and Poshmark and places like that, that's not always the case.
Yeah, I agree with you. Unfortunately, I don't follow the same motto. I usually do shipping, I would say 2 to 3 days a week, and that'll depend on what days we're gone on the weekend, what days I work that week, and how many sales come through. So it's not even like the post office is far, but I don't ship every day. That is, even on eBay, I think I put a 3 day, maybe I bumped it to 2 day shipping and handling. And usually I'm like stretching it on that second day, which I'm trying to get the top rated seller, and I think I have to change that to same day or 1 day shipping.
I
I
think it's
think,
within 2 days,
is
or
it within
I forget.
two?
I forget. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sort of on a roller coaster with that. I usually have that, and then every once in a while I'll have some sort of ding that takes it away from me on eBay. But yeah,
And are you mostly an eBay seller then? Where do you
yeah.
find the majority?
I start. So I'm a junk seller. I'll sell anything. But yeah, the majority of what I like to do is on eBay, and I've just fell in love with Poshmark. And
Yeah.
watching channels like yours actually has really helped me figuring out the right kind of clothing to buy. Now, one of the things I think I mentioned in the last two videos like this, talking to people from other provinces, I do have access to the Goodwill bins. So for me, picking up a pair of American Eagle jeans for $1.50 there is probably what it would cost. I can still make pretty good money selling them for like $20 to $30.
Yeah.
Where I know that's probably something you wouldn't pick up, right? Like, so there's a
Yeah.
difference there, but I still like to see those really good brands for sure.
And
That's actually, sorry, go
I
ahead.
think too, between eBay and Poshmark, it's different shoppers, and that is what same thing. That's why I like Poshmark, because they have like certain brands just do really well. And I feel like for clothing, yeah, yeah, clothing does well on eBay, but there's like, it's quite lucrative for some brands on Poshmark.
Yeah, there's a big difference, and I have noticed that when, for the most part, I try to keep my pricing pretty even, unless I know it does a lot better on one platform, and then obviously I will change it. But I do cross list basically on Poshmark Canada, US, Vinted, eBay. I just started Depop. But I mostly everything except for hard goods. Hard goods kind of stay where they belong, like on
Yeah.
Etsy and eBay. But clothing, pretty much across all those platforms. And the
Yeah,
pricing can be a little bit different for sure.
totally. Especially when you start playing on Etsy, I find pricing can be different there.
Oh, for sure. Okay. So since 2020, what have you changed in your business model, or what are you mostly focusing on now? Obviously, clothes is a big part of your business, but has that changed at all?
Oh, so many times, multiple changes. Um, I like to say when you get into a groove and everything's working, it's wash, rinse, repeat. When wash, rinse, repeat is no longer giving me the results that I'm expecting, then it's time to pivot and change. And I think I've changed the direction I've gone in a couple times, like drastically. When I first started, I was doing bins. So I would drive to Edmonton, I would pick up 350 pounds of clothes, and I would move them quickly. And yeah, it was a lot. Like my Jetta, my Thule was full, my trunk was full, my back seat was full to the roof. Like people would laugh. My front seat, you could barely see to look out the window. It was comical. And my car would just be like sunken down. And I was doing more volume selling. So my average, I remember calculating, because I started YouTube shortly after I started reselling. And I remember talking about my average selling price. And I like remember it being like $16 or $17. And I did a lot of bundles. I had a pair of American Eagle distressed skinny jeans in a size 10. Those sold for $18. I had another bundle. This was some new items that I had just listed on Friday. It was a Zara crop short sleeve tee in large. I wasn't sure if I was going to keep it. I ended up putting it in my closet. I also had an Aldo black quilted leather shoulder purse and Naturalizer black leather calfskin loafers in a size 9. We agreed on $40 for this bundle. I was happy with that, and that was sent out. I really like that Zara crop shirt. I probably should have kept it for myself, but sometimes... Yeah, I think I sold mostly bundles. I was like a little bundle queen, but the average sale price was really low. And I just remember like saying, okay, I want to try and get over $20. I want to try and get to $24. And it was kind of switching to not necessarily the binge shopping and selling like everything and anything I could find that would make $5 or $10, but to more selective sourcing, looking up solds, checking comparative prices, and just doing more selective sourcing. And then through that, I have evolved into raising my ASP. So for me, I always want to work less. I am a lazy reseller. I want to work the least amount and make the most amount of money. And what I found the best way to do that for my business was to sell higher ASP items. So I only have to source X amount of items. I only have to sell. I only have to ship. I reduced my time everywhere. And I, like in my business, I always say time is my currency. That's what I'm trading. I trade time and money. And next up is a 2-piece bundle. This went to Paradigm Thrift. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just appreciate you. So thank you. The bundle sold for $93. First item is a Free People Sweetheart balloon sleeve sweater in a size medium. Love these. These never sit long in my closet. The Sweetheart sweater is a sought after sweater. And the second item is a death pile item, but it's not a pair of shoes, it's a purse. And it was the vintage 1960s hand-tooled leather purse. And it's stunning, like stunning. My pictures don't do it any justice. She left me a love note as described. Great pieces as usual. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't have the time essentially to work full-time reselling and to do more volume selling. So I have to figure out ways to reach the profits I want with the amount of time that I have allotted into my business. So currently, I've made some big changes and I hired a VA. I'm listing about 100 items a week and still trying to keep that ASP over $45. I actually just calculated, I'm going to do a what sold videos later today. And my average sale price is $46 right now.
Wow,
which
that is
bad.
impressive. No, that's good.
Yeah, it's not bad. And I'm just photographing and doing the measurements, and she's drafting everything up, and then I approve it. And spending majority of my time sourcing, which I feel like to do for me to do that part-time and also work part-time, I have to be able to source larger quantities. So I expected my ASP to go down a little bit because I'm probably picking up things that I wasn't picking up when I was only listing 30 items a week.
Sure.
But yeah, it's interesting. I'm like so intrigued to see how this all turns out, because I know like just over the years of reselling that when you start to increase or you start to list lots, it usually takes a couple weeks for those sales to actually start to catch up and equate. So I think I'm 2 weeks into higher listing. And I'm interested to see what happens towards the end of summer as things, naturally start to pick up.
Yeah, I do think you'll see a big difference, because the last month, my listing goal just on eBay, but then across platform, was to double what I was doing, because I just went from part-time into full-time actually. And doing that, yeah, thank you. And in doing that, it took about 4 weeks to 4 or 5 weeks. So like right at the end of the month, I just noted the last 2 weeks, my sales haven't doubled, but they've certainly came up probably about 35 to 45%. And now I'm sort of writing that back out. And now I'm changing my personal business model again to maybe less items and higher overall sales price. But yeah, I do think you'll see a huge difference. If you are listing more, you're definitely going to make more sales for sure.
Yeah. I already have seen probably close to double
Wow.
It's so hard. It's so hard because I was really inconsistent before, like 20 to maybe 40 listings a week. And to go from like some inconsistencies to just super consistent. And I would say volume, I would say 100 listings a week is pretty volume.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it's flipping. And I had a lot of death pile items that I had her list first. So that was the first thing that I worked through. I bet you, I don't even know. I bet you close to 100, maybe 120 items of just dead inventory, negative assets that I was sitting on that I was like, okay, we're going to clear through that. But in that was a lot of really high value stuff too. So yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited. I want to build my store up. I would like to get to like 1,000 listings, maybe
Okay.
1,500. We'll see. Sky's the limit.
Yeah, I mean,
I
1,000 quality listings, that's amazing. I've hit the
yeah,
$1,000 mark before, and then for me personally, because like I mentioned earlier, I feel like I'm a junk seller. I sell lots of things. I kind of
yeah,
looked at what I had, and I did a huge purge and probably purged out like 200 items that I probably should have never had there in the first place, or
yeah,
maybe were like, and that at the time might have been selling well. Like for instance, pandemic puzzles. Like puzzles right now, I
yeah,
wouldn't touch, but at the moment they were great. Things like
yeah.
that. So I sort of did a big clear out. But if you had 1,000 items in your store of good quality inventory, yeah, I think that's a great number to achieve.
Yeah, and I think too, just opening up on the US side. So I just opened my US closet, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago. Time's really been eluding me lately. But I got shadow banned.
Oh,
Poshmark shadow banned me for like 4 or 5 days last week. So I just got off the ban and orders are going out. And yeah, I'm excited to see what happens there. I do talk to a couple other Canadian resellers that sell between Posh US and Canada.
mhm.
And one of them that probably runs a really similar business model to myself, same volume, things like that. She actually makes more money and more sales on Posh US than she does Posh Canada.
Wow.
So I'm pretty excited. She was like, like comparative, like our businesses. She was like, I think you're going to do really well there. So I'm excited for that as well. I've been wanting to be a US. This sounds funny because I'm a Canadian, but I've been wanting to be a US seller for so long because the market's so much larger. I think in Canada
It
we're
is.
looking at, I don't even know what their numbers. It was like, I think like 2 to 4 million for Canadian Poshmark users, and in the States it's like 60 million.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a
So
big difference. I've enjoyed
much
selling
larger.
on the U.S. Poshmark as well myself. So I do want to get into a specific question. So what I want to ask you is, since you're doing cross listing, you can't be manually cross listing. So what programming are you using?
No, okay. So
Yeah.
the one I've been using for a couple years is Prime Lister, but I recently just switched over to this new one. It's by the creators of Posh Sidekick, but it's
Okay.
still in beta testing. There's still a lot of things that they're working on in the background. So I honestly use both right now because the one doesn't quite fulfill my needs, but it will in the near future. So yeah, currently I'm using Prime Lister for my Posh US, Posh Canada. But
Okay.
for
Yeah.
my eBay listings, I'm using that new software.
Yeah. I have noticed also use Posh Sidekick, and I haven't looked at the software because I've been using Crosslist Magic for quite a long time, and it's just a browser extension for Chrome. It works
Yep.
very, very well. It's very simple. I mean, the only issue with that is, and I don't know if either one you're using D-lists or does anything like that. This doesn't do anything like that. It just opens
Yep.
up different windows and inputs as much information as possible. But it does make it so you can like list in about 45 seconds after it's there. So it is pretty good.
Yeah, so Prime Lister has, and both software platforms will have, but Prime Lister has an inventory system as well. So I can
Okay.
go in there, see where it's listed, and I can delist from there. The new software is actually going to have an auto delist in it. So, and
Oh, nice.
it's sort of working right now between my Poshmark and my eBay. Again, it's in development, so there's still bugs and some things that aren't quite connecting. But yeah, I'm really excited to be partnering up with them. They got some crazy technology coming out through that
Yeah.
company.
That's interesting, and it's interesting too that most of these companies, the two you mentioned, are Canadian friendly. But when you start looking at some of these other ones that have big names in the U.S., they just do not have any Canadian support whatsoever.
And zero interest in doing it too.
Yeah.
When I first started out, I reached out to some of the bigger ones in the US, and there was zero interest in working with Canadians. So it was like just trying to find a partnership with a software developer that was willing to also develop for the Canadian side. And to be honest, it's the same stuff. So once you have it developed for the US side, it's not much harder to put in the links, you know what I mean, for the Canadian links in the background. The only thing, this is really interesting actually, is that Poshmark Canada is way harder on Canadians with the relist feature for some reason. So they first kind of, clamp down on the Canadians where they're like, if you're relisting, we're not going to recognize your listings as new listings. Right. So the softwares, all the sharing softwares, were trying to find ways to work around it. But they've found workarounds, and Poshmark Canada, like, they've been relentless. Whatever they're doing in the background, like Naver, software, whatever, they are relentless in stopping it. And that's the one thing I always found interesting. I'm like, why are they picking on us?
Yeah.
But no issues on the American side. And I mean, because I talked to a developer, I have this information now, and I'm just like, what are they doing?
Yeah, and they make it, I mean, part of Poshmark is very social, but I mean, it's almost too social for like somebody like me who want to just sell on it as, side income and not just the social aspect. It's very difficult to, keep things moving.
Yeah. And I think automation just fixes that. Like,
absolutely,
you don't need to do anything. It does everything for you. If you have all your settings set up, you should only have to check in, you know what I mean, to answer a question or whatever.
Yeah, just basic stuff. So wanted to also ask you, I've asked John so far and Chris the same question. What are your 5 top bolo items right now? So obviously if we went back, they do change over time, but if you could just walk into any store and pick these items up, what would they be?
So my best selling items, and like good value, they are big percentage of my profits. Lululemon would be my first one. Aritzia brands, Wilfred, Babaton, those are another 2. And for everything I'm telling you, size and age and style all are multiple factors. So they all have to stack up. It's not just this brand. What else? Free People, Anthropology brands I do very well with. And I would say Levi's, and I think that's a Canadian thing, because in the States, I think Levi's is much more readily available at better prices than they are here in Canada. But Levi's jeans, those account for a large portion of my sales.
So, yeah, I was actually blown away the other day. I was in a mall in Toronto, and we went into Levi's stores, and I'm like, oh, I really like these jeans. I don't normally go into malls, so it was kind of odd anyway for me. And it's like $188 for these, like, distressed, look like somebody wore them like half their life. I'm like, oh, I kind of like these, not for $180, right? And you kind of forget about that when you are selling. And a lot of the brands that you mentioned, when you do go into those stores, the price tags are fairly hefty.
They are. And I think as a reseller, you almost, like, I think maybe women's clothing might be a little bit different than men's, but I rarely have to buy new clothes because I have so much access to secondhand clothing. And even my girls, like, a huge portion of their clothing is all secondhand. My youngest, for sure. My oldest, she's an adult, so she kind of does her own thing. But I always say, if you can find it secondhand, why not? Why would you pay full price? No one knows if your clothes are secondhand.
No, they really don't. Yeah, the odd thing these days, like if I go to a concert or something unique like that, I will buy new, but it's been a long time since I've actually bought anything brand new. And even with shoes, I like shoes. I've got so many pairs. Me and my wife have like a problem. I'd be embarrassed to show you how many shoes we own. But yeah, I mean, when you're paying like $8 for shoes, you can have 20 pairs of shoes if you want them.
Exactly. Same thing. I think the one thing that we spend the most on that would be new would be like outdoor clothes.
Right.
So ski and snowboard jackets. If I can find what I'm looking for online, I will try. But sometimes you're working within a time frame, and if I can't find it, then we'll buy those brand new. But I did get a Patagonia. I think it was the sweater puff downfilled. I picked it up off Posh in fall and I used it all winter under my Gore-Tex jacket and it was unbelievably warm. I was so happy. And I saved like $250 buying it on
Wow.
Poshmark.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
suppose where you are, you probably do get like our winters here aren't really too bad. I would say there's maybe 3 or 4 weeks that we get actual snow that I would complain about. You
Yeah.
probably get a lot more where you are.
Yeah, it's pretty cold in Saskatchewan. And
Yeah.
we're a big mountain family, so we spend a lot of time out in the mountains snowboarding. And yeah, there's cold days.
Yeah. I know in I think this January, December, I was doing some videos where I was just wearing hoodies and I had some people comment that were I think the one guy is from Saskatchewan actually, but he's like, how are you, like, isn't it winter there? I'm like, yeah, but not really.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah. So if we could run it back to 2020 and you were going to start all over again, what's the biggest thing that you wish you knew when you started selling online?
Um, I wish I would have understood the multiple factors for items, especially when you start to look for that higher ASP. It's not just brand, it's not just style. Like, I find you get the best results when you can have a couple factors that line up on an item. And I wish I would have thrifted more, comp checked more, did more research, look up
Yeah.
solds. I wish I would have tried to learn more, but I think it's hard. You don't know where to start, right? You don't know what you need to know. There's no rule book. And I mean, there's lots of people kind of sharing their information, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram, but trying to filter through and find out what applies to you, what works for you, where you live or your business or your life is like a whole nother thing, right? So I think, yeah, I wish I wouldn't have done the volume for the year that I did it because it was like burnout. It was hard. I found it very challenging.
Yeah.
Especially,
And
and
that
I
makes
was
a lot
still
of sense.
working full time then. Like I
Okay.
just cut down my hours to part time maybe in the last 6 months. Up until 6 months ago, I was still working full time. So 3 12-hour shifts
Okay.
a
Yeah.
week,
That's
which,
a good amount of time to put in. I mean, that is, yeah.
yeah. And we're gone on weekends. So I'm never home on weekends. I don't resell on the weekends. So that left me with 2 days a week to run my business and do YouTube. And now with just kind of evolving, I'm down to 2 days a week at work. So 2 12-hour
Okay.
shifts, and that gives me 3 days to do my business stuff.
And do you still just answer basic questions and stuff in the weekends, or you just turn off notifications and you forget about it until Monday morning?
Well, I actually turned off all notifications on my phone like a month ago, maybe.
Yeah.
So only when I go on my phone, like only if
Okay.
I'm looking to answer something, then I'll go in and check to see what's going on. But on the weekends, I mean, I'm sure I look at my phone more often than I realize, and my family would say differently, but it's not a priority.
Okay. Yeah, because it is very easy to overindulge and be obsessive about it, right? I know my
Yeah.
personality trait is like that. I do obsess about things that I do like, and I still am at the point where I absolutely love reselling, and I hope that never ends because I found something that I truly feel passionate about. So that's kind of nice, right? Like I worked 20 years in a factory that I didn't love, but it was necessity. And
Yeah.
to do something you like is certainly interesting. So do you think you have any plans on doing this full time? I know you kind of talked about maybe not on your channel before, but it's
I
interesting.
toss it around. So my passion is reselling. My passion used to be pharmacy, and uh, it's just not the same anymore. And I've been doing pharmacy for almost 20 years. So I think that also I'm just kind of like, it's boring. I don't want to say it's boring, but it's just, I don't know. I some days I feel like I'm kind of over it. I work at the hospital. To me, it's very factory work.
Mhm.
We don't. I used to work down in Emerge where I would do medication histories and talk to patients, but I haven't been doing that for like the last year and a half. And I just really enjoy reselling. Also, I know that in my career as a farm tech, I'm kind of at my cap. Like I can't go any further. The most I could do is pick up overtime hours, but there's not a lot of room for growth in my profession. It's kind of like you're here, and then that's all there is, unless I went and re-educated and did something else. So what I like about reselling, and well, number one, being my own boss, choosing my own hours, setting my own limits, what days I don't work, which days I do. I would rather be a salary worker than an hourly worker. I would rather be in charge of my own time and my own speed of work, you know what I mean, than be that hourly, no matter what you do, you're getting paid for that amount. You know what I mean? I think that's how I'm
Absolutely.
trying to say it. Yeah. So I would like to go full time. I would love to. And this is the one thing. If I give up my pharmacy license, it would be very hard to get it back. And
Right.
it, like, healthcare is just such a forever thing. Like I can get a job anywhere doing it. I can get a job reselling anywhere. So for me, if I can keep both of them, that's kind of my happy point right now. But I keep saying I'm going to semi-retire in a couple years when my youngest is done high school. We're moving out west, and I want to just travel, resell, thrift, YouTube, do fun stuff.
Yeah, that sounds like the perfect life.
But I'm not ready to walk away from pharmacy, because there may come a time where, it's might be a part of my life. And realistically, I probably have like 25 years of work left, right? Or could, if I work till 65. And that's a
Yeah,
long time to be like, to give up my license.
for sure. No, I
So
totally
that's
understand that.
that's the technicality. If I didn't have a pharmacy license, I would be reselling. Absolutely. I would go full time. I would travel source. I have plans. I think the first step for me was doing this VA, increasing my listings, increasing my business, and testing. Like, is this possible? Can I create a full-time income? What kind of hours am I looking at? Like right now, I'm trying to figure out a way to, in 3 years, have my business kind of run itself, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
whether I sourced and worked, for maybe a month straight, not a month straight, but, for 4 weeks, and then drafted up all my listings, and then had my VA kind of work through them, and then just pay someone to come ship.
Okay.
Whether I paid a local stay-at-home mom that just wants to make some extra money, and she comes over, 2 or 3 times a week, does my shipping for me, I could be gone for quite a bit of time then. Just trying to figure out, how do I live the life I want to live and do everything I want to do? And I think reselling is an awesome means to doing whatever you want to do.
It is.
The sky's the limit.
It is. And yeah, that's exactly it. The sky's the limit, and it'll give you whatever you put in it usually gives back. So I do really like that for sure.
That's the best part.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, and I know this is going to be controversial and people are going to disagree with me, but I feel like a lot of times your success is a direct correlation to the effort that you're putting in. And anytime I had slow sales weeks or slow sales months, I'm always like, well, I didn't really list consistently, and I only did this. And like, I can almost pick apart like a bunch of things that I didn't do that week. And I'm like, okay, it probably makes sense. And I know that when I'm on point, that as long as I'm meeting these metrics, the sales will come in. And I think knowing your data, that's another thing, like knowing whether you calculated it monthly or every 6 months. I do mine at the end of the year. What is my average sale price? What is my hourly wage for the year? What do I net from my gross? Like, so for me, I run high business costs, and I clump YouTube and all that kind of stuff into it. So it's hard. I don't separate everything. This is going tax wise. I don't separate everything. It kind of all gets clumped in together. But my net is usually 55%. So when I look at my gross sales, and that's 2 years in a row, pretty close to that.
No, that's pretty good.
And that's fees, shipping discounts, shipping cost, like everything. So yeah, I think if you're a binge shopper, you probably see higher net. Definitely you would see higher net.
I do, but that is why, for sure. I mean, the sales, what I'm paying for it, and then I'm a big avid yard sailor, garage sailor, and same thing. You're paying not very much money for stuff.
Yeah. And I find, well, you can still be a clothing seller and do that stuff, but that, like the garage sales and the bins, works really good too for junk selling.
When I started on Poshmark, I was kind of looking at it like just padding the numbers as extra money. I wasn't, at first, I didn't even think of it as really a lot of extra income. I'm just like, oh, well, I'll just see what I can sell here. And it was sort of just like a fun experiment that snowballed into something else. And I absolutely love it. If I can do all of my business on Poshmark, I know a lot of people say they don't like the way that some of it is, but I like the fact that they hold the money until it's actually released to you. On eBay, you get the money, and then chances are if something goes wrong, you got to dig the money back out, and it's a big mess, and you go through these things. With Poshmark, it's cut and dry. It's yes or no, and if you don't like the way it went, they might throw you $5, but you're not getting much more than that. You don't have to pay for returns. If they're going to get something returned, you're getting the item back. That's a big deal, especially with the cost of shipping. And I think they're pretty fair, but I haven't sold anything. I try not to sell things that I think are going to get returned or questionable condition in the first place. So I think if you're selling questionable stuff, maybe you run into more problems.
I agree. My return rate on Poshmark, I haven't calculated in a long time. Last time I calculated, I think it was like 0.03%. So I think as long as that's it, you're sourcing things, you're disclosing flaws, you're trying to find things, that are, you're not going to get returns on or whatever. You're sizing everything properly, not buying shrunken things. What I like about Poshmark is it literally has zero barrier to entry. Like, it's so easy. eBay doesn't have barrier to entry either, but it's just a little bit more complicated. And I think that's what scares people away. Like a lot of sellers that start on Poshmark, eBay just seems so scary. I think if you start on eBay, you're golden, because then after that, everything else just seems easy. But yeah, I mean, 95% of my business is on Poshmark.
Yeah, unless scamming is a really big thing on eBay as well, where everybody talks about getting scammed and it means something else, but I essentially mean somebody who has, if somebody has zero feedback, buys something, it's instantly a problem. And the eBay is very buyer forward. The buyer's always right on eBay.
Yes, I feel like there's a lot more protection on Poshmark for sure. As a seller, for sure. And I think that's also scary for sellers that are trying to go to eBay, is that there's a lot of stories out there, right? A lot of stories out there of scammers.
Yeah, I haven't had anything too bad happen. I feel like it's been a couple of years ago now. I bought a Amazon liquidation palette, and I would say a couple of the big items in there were projectors that were worth, resale value was about $800.
Oh,
and
wow.
I had sold one to some guy in Ontario. It got there. I had tracking, everything. Of course, he says, well, I never got this. But luckily, it did show it was delivered to his address. And the end result was that I think they actually sided on both of our behalves. They refunded him and let me keep the money. But, usually, unless you do have tracking or can have some sort of proof, it's really tricky. And I've been on the other side of that as well, where you just have to eat the loss.
Yeah. I haven't had any big losses on eBay, but I haven't sold a lot of things. Like, I consider myself a very small eBay seller. And that's, I think one of the reasons why I don't push eBay as much is because I don't have a cross-border courier. So right now on my eBay returns, I accept returns, but always at buyer's cost.
Yeah, same.
And I think that can be a deterrent sometimes for people. If I had access to a good cross-border courier that was close, that was like a direct one, I think I would do, maybe I would do free returns. I don't know. Like, do you do free returns?
No, same business model, buyer pays return. I find people who genuinely want to return it will play by the rules, and people who don't will just say item not described or find a reason for you to have to pay. So it's sort of part of the game on eBay, I find, but that it is part of it. And that was one of the hardest things for me when I started selling at eBay, or just online in general, is just sometimes realizing that that's not the end of the world. I sell a lot of VCRs and things like that, which sounds silly, but
No,
people buy VCRs for like decent money. And I
they
really
do.
had like $8 invested in this. I might have lost out on maybe 80 to a $90 sale, depending on the VCR or whatever. But you kind
Yeah,
of have to stop and think, you know what, like it's really $8. Yes, it'd be nice to have the sale, but
yeah,
you don't want to stress yourself out too much over it.
yeah, yeah. That's true. I agree. Uh, yeah, I feel the same way. I generally like even on Poshmark, if someone um, wants to initiate a return, for the most part, I accept it. Recently, though, I've had a lot of canceled sales through live shows,
Okay.
and it's through silence. Though I've been automating my silent shows, and a lot of accidental bids. That's actually one of my little pet peeves right now about Poshmark. Is their bid button is just a tap. It's not a slide to bid. I think they've bounced back and forth, but it's back to just a tap to bid. And I think there's a lot of accidental bids.
Okay.
So
At least you're getting bids. My Posh shows are like crickets. I do it just to get the positive algorithm going.
yeah,
But yeah, I have not had a lot of success with the Posh live shows.
I use them for like the silent shows. I use them for more advertising, free advertising. So you get your closet on the shows page, right? Even if it's just the
Yeah.
silent show page, I put my best items into the silence. I mark them at 30% off list price. I'm not anticipating to make a bunch of sales, but what I'm hoping is that my ideal shoppers are, cruising through and they're like, oh, wow, look at all the items. Okay, maybe I'm not going to buy them in the show, but I want to go check out her closet, right? So I
Yeah.
kind of use the funnel. So yeah,
That
I agree.
makes
I
that
don't make
does
a
make
ton of sales.
sense. No, and I do find after the fact, I do usually make a few full price sales, whether it, like you said, whether it's somebody browsing the closet or just the algorithm rewarding, your behavior. Hard to say, but regardless, that's definitely
Yeah.
a nice little thing happening there. All right. Once again, thank you so much, Tabs. I do appreciate it. And if you guys like videos like this, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing for more content. I think I have another one lined up as well. I think we're going to be hitting Vancouver next. So stick around for that, guys. Take care. Stay safe. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.